In this video, I want to show you the differences in continuous shooting speed and buffer size between the Nikon D7100 and the Canon 7D Mark II. Now, keep in mind that the Nikon D7100 is not in the same class as the 7D Mark II. As of January of 2015, Nikon has not yet released a high-end DX camera or a camera with an APS-C sensor that has equivalent feature set and capabilities as the 7D Mark II. But if you're a Nikon shooter, you're probably wondering what the D7100 6 frames per second sounds like and compares like to 10 frames per second on the 7D Mark II, and how long the camera will last before the buffer runs out of memory. So right here I've got the Nikon D7100. I've got it set to 1/4000th of a second at 2.8, and the Canon 7D Mark II is also set to the same settings. The settings really don't matter. All I want to do is show you what the continuous shooting speed is like between the two cameras, and then obviously the buffer size. So two things to keep in mind here. I've got both cameras loaded with the same Extreme Pro Series SD card, so the memory card is not something that's going to slow down either camera. And also I've got the Nikon D7100 set to 12-bit compressed RAW. There's no setting, unfortunately, on the Canon 7D, but I did this just to be able to squeeze as much or as many images as possible into that buffer. So right here, by half pressing the camera, I can see that it will shoot about 8 frames before the buffer fills up. So let's go ahead and shoot the Nikon D7100. Now, it lasted about maybe a second and a half before the buffer ran out and the camera started to slow down. And let's do that one more time just for you to be able to hear what the 6 frames per second sounds like. There you go. And now the same thing on the Canon 7D Mark II. And this guy has 10 frames per second. I've got it set to continuous shooting speed. I turned off autofocus on both of these cameras just so that the cameras don't try to autofocus while doing this. But let's go ahead and hear how the 7D Mark II is going to shoot at 10 frames per second. Wow, now that's a huge difference. This guy sounds like a machine gun compared to this guy. So one more time, and right now it's still finishing up writing all that information from the buffer into the memory, and it's done. So let's go ahead and do it one more time. Wow. So there's a huge difference between 6 frames per second to 10 frames per second. It's not just how it sounds. You know, if you're capturing fast action, this camera is going to have a lot more frames to choose from. So if you have a bird flying in and maybe grabbing a fish from the lake, an osprey, or you know, maybe some other fast action happening, you're going to have a lot more frames with this camera compared to this camera. So now let's go ahead and fire them at the same time to see what the difference is, or to hear the difference. So it's a pretty huge difference between the D7100 and the 7D Mark II, which obviously at this point makes the 7D Mark II much better for capturing fast action.